Kentucky basketball is currently having to prepare for the start of the season without any of their 7-footers in their lineup. How much could this hurt the Wildcats? It could hurt them a lot on the defensive end to start things.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what is going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on in to Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for Sports Illustrated for various SEC-related things. But on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That is Prize Picks daily fantasy sports made easy. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing how much could Kentucky's lack of height in the front court early in the year hurt them. Going to talk about the situation here with Tre Mitchell having to hold down the fort pretty much in the front court at 6'9". Going to dive into what this could mean for Kentucky on both sides of the ball, because I don't know if I've been as fair to Tre Mitchell as I should have been over this past month or so as we've sorted things out with Zvonimir and Bradshaw and Ugonna and the like. So thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe to the show. If you're listening on podcast, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Before we get into Kentucky's lack of height, we're also going to talk about Kentucky's odds to make the Final Four and some final preseason bracketology. I have a question for you guys on today's episode. What is the better fruit? I'm going to give you two choices here, and I want you to leave this in the YouTube comments below. What is the better fruit? Peaches or grapes? I'm not going to tell you why I'm asking you this, other than the fact that it is to simply settle a debate with somebody. What is the better fruit, peaches or grapes? You can leave that in the YouTube comments below. Also, you can hit me on the socials at Locked On UK. I'm actually running a poll on this over on my Twitter at @LanceDawe_. There's also a poll up on the community tab of my YouTube channel. Taking this very seriously. What's your favorite fruit between the two of peaches or grapes? What's better? Please let me know in the comments below. Okay, how much will Kentucky's lack of height actually hurt them this upcoming season? Obviously, as we know at this point, Kentucky dealing with the loss of pretty much 3 different 7-footers right now for various reasons. Aaron Bradshaw had to undergo foot surgery earlier this year. I believe that happened in June. Zvonimir Ivisic currently not approved to play by the NCAA. That could come literally tomorrow. It could come 3 weeks from now. We don't know if Zvonimir will be cleared and when, if that's possible, when he will be cleared. And then Ugonna Onyenso got hurt right before the GLOBL JAM in July. So Kentucky right now dealing without a lot of players in their front court. Thank goodness Tre Mitchell exists. Because if he did not exist, I think Kyle Tucker pointed this out on Twitter during the Georgetown College exhibition. If Bob Huggins does not get fired from West Virginia, Kentucky's probably starting Jordan Burks at center. Let's back up for a second. I want to pull this up for you guys here. Jordan Burks was listed, if I'm not mistaken, at 6'7" about a year and a half ago. Maybe less than that. He was listed at 6'7" and a guard. He was playing guard for OTE and whatever high school Hillcrest Prep or whatever he was playing for. It might have been in Florida, somewhere like that. 24/7 Sports has something completely different on him. He's currently, if I'm not mistaken, listed at 6'8" or 6'9" on Kentucky basketball's roster. I'm going to pull this up right now for you guys just to make sure that I'm not off on this whenever I say that Jordan Burks is listed. He's listed at 6'8". 24/7 Sports has him at 6'9". He's not 6'9". He is 6'8", 190 pounds. That is what you would have had to have started at center if Bob Huggins did not resign from West Virginia or / get fired. Why is that? Well, Tre Mitchell would still be on that team. He would still be hanging out, being coached by Bob Huggins. you don't have a center if all of these different things happen, and Kentucky has to be thanking their lucky stars that not only is Tre Mitchell a body in this room, but he is as capable of plugging into the system and evidently playing very, very well through his GLOBL JAM games, the scrimmages, and then now this Georgetown College exhibition. The value that Tre Mitchell brings to you, outside of just being a body in the room, is immense. Watch what he did against Georgetown College. Go back and watch that game and pay attention to how Kentucky utilizes him in the middle of the floor, how they utilize him on pick and roll, how they utilize him in pick and pop situations. He is an extremely versatile offensive weapon for you, especially if he can continue to knock down threes at the rate that he has through, again, the round robin in Canada, and then this exhibition here against Georgetown College. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's going to shoot 50+% from beyond the arc for the entire season. There's going to be days where he chucks up 4 or 5 threes a game, and he doesn't hit any of them, or maybe he hits just one. But there's also going to be games where he goes 3 of 5, 4 of 6 from beyond the arc, and he's able to cook because he has that range, he has that ability, he has that consistency. I think Kentucky struck gold with this player in the transfer portal, considering how they want to utilize him. Now, the question that we've continued to ask on this show is whether or not Kentucky can actually utilize this kid in a volume setting. He has proven across his career that he can do it in a lot of different ways. At UMass, he was their primary center, one of their primary scorers early on in his career. At Texas, he was kind of a piece. He was kind of a middleman there, and he wasn't averaging a ton of points, wasn't taking a lot of shots. At West Virginia, I think it was very similar to the load that he had with the Longhorns. Did not really have a whole lot of opportunity to be one of the front-tier guy or top-tier guys on the offense when it came to the amount of shots that he got, the type of shots that he got. I think that he was just kind of a reserve player in terms of offensive, who's getting the ball on offense. And then he comes to Kentucky here, and then the question is, okay, he did it at UMass. Can he do it again? Considering the situation here without these 3 players, these 3 7-footers, Aaron Bradshaw, Zvonimir Ivisic, and Ugonna Onyenso. That's been the question. And I've come to a realization recently that just because he does not have a ton of height as an individual, it does not mean he cannot perform. He's also gotten a decent amount of blocks as well at 6'9". He is also, like I mentioned, a triple threat, I think, when it comes to what he does on the offensive end of the floor. He can shoot, he can play around the rim, and he can rebound, and he can also distribute the basketball. We got to see that as well. He can pass players into really good situations offensively, and I am just very impressed with how he has played through what has essentially been 4 or 5 different quote-unquote games with Kentucky. So I think after getting to assess how Kentucky played against Georgetown College, their defense as a team is going to struggle at different points without 3 7-footers in the lineup. Duh. You don't have your entire rotation. You're going to have issues happen with Jordan Burks being your other guy in this lineup that's going to slide in at the center position. It's going to be tough until one or all of these 3 7-footers come back. Duh. But because of how good I think Kentucky's going to be on the offensive end of the floor, I think that their lack of height may not end up hurting them as much as I may have thought initially. I think that Tre Mitchell is going to be decent to okay at times against opponents that are going to be physically overpowering in the front court. He's also, I think, going to be able to get his because he can stretch out to that 3-point line and do so many other things well for the team. I am very excited to see how Tre Mitchell slots into this lineup moving forward in the regular season. Again, I'm not saying he's going to go out there and he's going to light it up every single night. You may see for the first 2 games of the season, he could start out cold. We don't know. We don't know how these players are going to start out. Justin Edwards, who has been pretty cold offensively, he could just all of a sudden be the leading scorer for the first 10 games of the season. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think based on what we've seen, we can get a little excited about Tre Mitchell in this front court. And if just one of these 7-footers come back, Bradshaw, Onyenso, Ivisic, I think it's going to make his life a lot easier, and it's going to make Kentucky a lot more dangerous. So their lack of height currently, it's going to hurt them in ways, absolutely, but I don't think it's going to hurt them as much as it could have especially considering Tre Mitchell is on your roster. So thank goodness for that. If you have any thoughts on Kentucky's lack of height, if you have any thoughts on how they could fare at the beginning of the season, I'm skeptical as to how the Wildcats are going to fare overall. Not necessarily, obviously part of it is the lack of height, but the team as a whole is very inexperienced, and what we saw against Georgetown College was not perfect by any means. You're going to have bumps in the road. So if you've got any thoughts on how Kentucky projects out, you can leave that in the YouTube comments below. Speaking of projecting out, Kentucky basketball has some of the best odds to make the Final Four this upcoming season. I want to talk about that and the two things, I've boiled it down to two for you guys. Two things that I think Kentucky has to do in order to make a run to the Final Four. Before I get to that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Athletic Brewing. Athletic Brewing makes non-alcoholic beers that actually taste really good. They have completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, sours, and more. They are the fastest growing non-alcoholic brewery in the U.S., so you need to get on board. You can find the Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or you can buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off their first online order. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. That is near beer. Exclusions, of course, apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's literally just you against the numbers, and instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you can pick more or less on 2 to 6 different player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes them the #1 daily fantasy sports app, and you may be watching this likely on Tuesday, so Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. So each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to add even more value. You can go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Really simple to play, a lot of fun. I love it. Check them out with Taco Tuesday and the discounts that they provide on their player projections. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That is Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. If you have not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. If you're listening on podcast, I would really appreciate it if you do that as well. Question one more time, just to remind you guys, what's the better fruit, peaches or grapes? You can leave that in the YouTube comments below. And if you're listening on podcast, at Locked On UK is where you can find that. Find me on the socials to give your opinion there. Heated debate, very heated debate about the better overall fruit. So Kentucky has some of the best odds to make the Final Four this upcoming season. Right now, the Kentucky Wildcats have the 5th best odds according to FanDuel. That's behind Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, and Purdue. I think that Kentucky, as we've discussed, just to give you my thoughts on this upcoming season, I think Kentucky will be a fun team to watch during the regular season. I think they're going to win a lot of games. I think their offense is going to be fun. But are they going to make a run in the postseason? That's something that we have a much more difficult time projecting out because it's so difficult to win in March. You don't really know what you're getting into until you see those opponents. And until you see this team on the court, you're probably going to have a very difficult time projecting how far they can truly make it into the Final Four. So FanDuel has a lot of trust in the Kentucky Wildcats, I guess, to do something special this upcoming season. I would like to imagine that's if all 3 players in their front court outside of Tre Mitchell are healthy and able to go. So I've got 2 things here for you. I've boiled it down to 2, and there are so many different things inside of these 2 different statements that we can dive into a little bit. 2 different things Kentucky has to do in order to make that Final Four run. Again, 5th best odds according to one of the biggest books out there. I think you need to prove you are competitive against the best competition in the regular season. You've got to be able to go out there and win consistently against the best. That is at home, that is at a neutral site, and that is on the road. I have compiled here for you the list of top 50 teams that Kentucky is going to play this upcoming season. And it's top 50 according to KenPom, their preseason rankings. So if I have a team on here and you say they're not necessarily top 50, this is according to KenPom's top 50 ratings system. Because we currently don't have the net rankings because those take a few weeks to actually develop. So at the top here, we're going to run through it for as early to as late as Kentucky will see these opponents. Kansas at a neutral site. You have to be competitive in that game or win it outright. Miami at home. Think you got to win that game. North Carolina at a neutral site. You got to have something like this on your schedule. North Carolina, or on your resume. North Carolina, absolutely. You got to be able to get something like this. You play Florida twice. They are currently a top 40 team on KenPom. You get them at home, you get them on the road. If you can split that 1-1 or you can go 2-0 here, I think that's going to be perfect for you. Florida, the Gators, I think, are a sleeper team in the SEC this upcoming season. They look polished in certain areas, a lot more impressive than I thought they would in the preseason. Tennessee's also a team that looked really good in their win against Michigan State on the road in that scrimmage game as well. Beautiful atmosphere, by the way. What a great start to college basketball. You play Texas A&M on the road. You get Mississippi State twice. That's a team that's top 30 in the KenPom rankings. Like I've talked about before, I think Texas A&M may be the favorite to win this league this upcoming season, by the way. So that's going to be a really tough out on the road. If you can pick something like that up, I think it's going to go a long way as a strong quad one victory for you. Arkansas twice. If you can split that 1-1, that would be great. Tennessee 1-1 as well. If you can somehow go 3-1 across the board between Arkansas and Tennessee, that would be perfect for your resume and help me understand, okay, where's this team at heading into March? Because both Tennessee and Arkansas have made Elite Eight runs here recently. Gonzaga, another team. You've got a perfect opportunity at home, what should be a great environment in Rupp Arena. Prove yourself against a team that is known for getting close in March, but not quite there. Auburn on the road as well. That's going to be a very good team in the SEC this season. If you can get something like that done in a hostile environment. LSU is a top 50 team, number 47 in the preseason KenPom ratings as well. I don't understand this one as much as some of these others, but we'll get behind it here for the sake of this exercise. And then Alabama is the other opponent. They are a top 10 team, and you have to play them at home. Alabama may be somewhere fluttering around the bottom of the top 25 for the majority of the year, so maybe KenPom's going to have to slide them down a little bit. But the point being, I think this list, Kansas, Miami, UNC, Florida, A&M, MSU, Arkansas, Tennessee, Gonzaga, Auburn, LSU, and Alabama, I think all of those teams, you have so many different chances to prove yourself consistently against really good competition. All of those teams could absolutely make it to the NCAA tournament. In fact, I could see all but maybe three of them, definitively making the NCAA tournament. Mississippi State, LSU, and Florida being the fringe teams there. I think Kentucky's got so many opportunities up and down the schedule to prove themselves time and time again, whether they are ready or not for the postseason. And once you get to the postseason, this is the second point I wanted to make here. You have to have significantly better defense than we currently expect from the Kentucky Wildcats. I'm not sitting here saying that Kentucky's defense is going to be awful, but look at the trends historically over the past couple of decades or so. What has been the biggest talking point when it comes to finding a champion or identifying potential champions in the NCAA tournament? It's looking at how efficient they are on KenPom, both offensively and defensively. If I'm not mistaken, it's something like you have to be inside like the top 15 or top 20 of both metrics, both in adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom to have a realistic shot at making it to that Final Four type of area, to that national championship, possibly too. And Kentucky right now, I don't think that they are on paper projected to have one of the nation's best defenses. It does not look like that's currently the case. So if they are able to do that, if they are able to get a top 25, a top 20, a top 15 type of defense, you could absolutely see this team make a run in March. Defense, as much as people have said it, it's a cliche for a reason. Defense does win championships. Now, obviously, you need really good guard play as well in the postseason, but I think these are the two things. You have to prove yourself to be really good against the best competition at home, at a neutral site, on the road, And then Kentucky needs to have really good rim protection. I mean, really, really good rim protection in the postseason. So those are my two things. If you'd like to add on to it, if you want to flesh any of those thoughts out in the YouTube comments or hit me on the socials, you could absolutely do that. All right, before we wrap up the show, I want to get to Joe Lunardi's final preseason bracketology here. He has updated their bracketology, and believe it or not, he has actually slid Kentucky up in his seeding. Does it really matter, though? Not really, but I think it's something fun to look at here right before the season starts. We'll come back to you, Joe, after you projected all of this stuff out. Before we dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof hacks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, wrapping up the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. One more time, I want to remind you guys, if you would like to go vote on the poll here on my community tab over on YouTube, what's a better fruit, peaches or grapes? You can leave that in the YouTube comments below. You can also check it out on the community tab. You also can check it out over on my Twitter, and it looks like currently one fruit has a decisive 13-14% advantage over another. We've got a whole day left on that poll, so we'll keep tabs on it. But yeah, I'm going to take this pretty seriously. This person takes it pretty seriously as well. So final preseason bracketology here for the Kentucky Wildcats. As we all know, kids, if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, if you've been consuming online sports media for any amount of time, and you find yourself wandering across the internet and you stumble upon preseason bracketology, whether it be for my man Joe over on ESPN, who seems to consistently forget things that are going on in the current state of college basketball, whether it be over at something like CBS Sports, whether it be on some metric site like KenPom or Hasla or something like that, Evan Manaya, somewhere like that. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Yeah, I need you to understand something with me. Bring it in. These things do not matter. I mean, some of these guys are genuine experts at what they do, and some of these guys are literally just going off of pure hard numbers. And as we've learned, if you watch college basketball, if you watch the NCAA tournament, sometimes numbers don't really mean anything. Sometimes it's the bigger number that beats the smaller number, and then you end up being very upset because you lost your office bracket pool and you had $100 riding on it. Shout out different teams like Michigan State or Duke for completely botching things in the past for me. These things don't necessarily matter, but what are they? I think that they are fun devices to look at throughout the season at the beginning of the year to kind of get a feel for where teams are projected to be. Just because somebody projects something doesn't mean you have to hate on them. Doesn't mean you have to tell them, oh, you're going to be definitively wrong. No, some of these guys, like I said, do this for a living. They've done this for a long time. So let's kind of take these things with a large grain of salt because it's very difficult to predict. Things will shuffle around. Things will change. But at the same time, maybe we revisit this at some point here later on down the line and see just how far our team, the Kentucky Wildcats, have climbed from their preseason expectations. Because throughout this offseason, I think Kentucky has consistently beaten the allegations that they're not going to be a very good team this upcoming season. They've rallied the troops. They've gotten their pieces together. Right now, they're still dealing with some health issues and getting their big Croatian dude approved by the NCAA to come and play. But right now, they've continued to prove through all of this, hey, you've watched us play in Canada. You watched us not just go undefeated, but blow some teams out of the water. Baylor could not even, I believe, keep a 500 record in this last year. You got to see us play in this exhibition game against Georgetown College. By no means was that perfect, but statistically, that was pure domination. Right now, Kentucky, I think is probably somewhere, if I had to guess, based on my projections for the regular season, which is 25-6, by the way, for those of you that have not seen that podcast, I think the Wildcats are going to go 25-6 in the regular season. Kentucky's somewhere between a 1 and a 3 seed. Somewhere, that's where I'm projecting them out to be, I guess, especially if they beat the teams I think they're going to beat. And with the loss to Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, maybe it bounces out to like a 3 or a 2. According to our boy Joe Lunardi at ESPN, he has Kentucky moving up from a 6 seed to a projected 5 seed heading into the start of college basketball. Some other notable SEC teams: Florida at a 10 seed, Auburn as a 7. You look across the board, Mississippi State as an 8, Arkansas as a 4, A&M as well as a 4 seed, Tennessee listed as a 2 seed, Alabama as a 4 seed. So a mix of teams above and below the Kentucky Wildcats here before we start the season. I think that Kentucky, again, probably projecting out to be somewhere between, we could slide it all the way down to 4. A 4-1. That's where I think Kentucky's probably going to end up this season, especially once they get their players back and once they get their 7-footers back. They're going to look like it. I think they are truly going to look like it. You look at some other notables here as well outside the Southeastern Conference. Your 1 seeds are Kansas, Purdue, Michigan State, and Duke. Obviously, you play one of those teams here at the very beginning of the season. UConn, Creighton, Tennessee, and Houston are your 2 seeds, and then your 3 seeds include Texas, Arizona, Gonzaga, and Marquette. So a lot of familiar faces here. Marquette, by the way, a top 5 team, but only a 3 seed. And Mr. Lunardi's projections here. Very interesting to note that is where where Marquette, the Golden Eagles, sit before the beginning of the year. Miami, by the way, is a 6 seed, somebody that the Wildcats are going to have to take on early in the season here. You could speculate for half an hour about how this bracket could truly project out. I think Kentucky's going to be a higher seed than this. I'm not going to sit here and bash Joe Lunardi because, again, it's just projections at the beginning of the season. I think I've said this on the show before. To quote, I think it was Frodo Baggins. It might have been Bilbo. It's just a bit of fun. Just a bit of fun. Having a little bit of fun with it. So if you've got any thoughts on the preseason bracketology, you can leave that in the YouTube comments below, or you can hit me on the socials. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.